While many printers have shifted their focus, Freeport Press has remained committed to the art of print. For companies that need a printing partner for magazines, look no further than Freeport Press. We offer the capabilities a customer would expect from a national printer while offering the level of customer service clients expect from a family-owned business. Freeport Press. We do print, and we do it well.
freeportpress.com.
What strikes me is that 20 years ago, the bet was that daily newspaper would die and only would remain magazine because their format and their rhythm was so different from digital. And now, today, it's exactly the contrary. The ones who are thriving are newspapers. Look at the figures of the New York Times. Le Monde is quite profitable. And so to do a magazine supplement of a newspaper brand is the best of both worlds.
Name a major newspaper anywhere in the world, and you will find a magazine, or two, or three. The New York Times is the obvious example of this. The Times of London is another obvious example. And now more and more legacy newspapers from around the world are publishing their magazines in English. La Repubblica in Italy, for example, publishes D. And now, France's venerable Le Monde is out with M International, a glossy biannual that distills the weekly M magazine for an English-speaking audience. Long called the newspaper of reference in France, Le Monde occupies an oversized space in the French media. When the Olympics returned to Paris, Le Monde decided to create an English version of their newspaper for the web. Then, they decided to create the magazine in English, something that not just added an extra piece of land to their media ecosystem, but one that pleased their advertisers as well. I spoke to Louis Dreyfus, the CEO of Le Monde, about the business case for English, how the magazine attracts new readers to the newspaper, the power of print, and how AI is one of the reasons Le Monde can create in English in the first place. Vous écoutez The Full Bleed, et je m'appelle Arjun Basu. A programming note. To make our lives and yours simpler, we've combined all of our shows into one channel under the Magazium brand. So if you've been having a hard time finding The Full Bleed, just search and subscribe to the Magazium channel on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Before we talk about Le Monde and the magazine, I just want to ask about you and your past and your journey that led you to Le Monde.
I study in France. I'm graduate from a business school, HEC. Then I moved to London when I study at the London School of Economics. And then I moved to New York, where I started my career for Hachette Philippe Aki magazine. At the time was a quite large magazine group in the US, publishing a magazine like Women's Day, Car Driver, Road and Track, but also Premiere. And we launched at the time George magazine, whose publisher was John Kennedy. We bought Mirabella. We bought the US edition of Premiere. We did plenty of things. I was at the same time international controller for the magazine group, but also the New York correspondent for Premiere magazine in Paris as a journalist. I stayed there for 6 years.
And then you came to France and joined the group, or you did something else?
No, then I moved to Marseille, in the south of France, to get a more operational experience as a CFO. And then I was hired by Libération, a French daily, as a CEO. And a few years later, I built a project for Pierre Berger, Xavier Niel, and Mathieu Pigasse to take over Le Monde. And when we succeeded, they offered me a job as a CEO, and it was 15 years ago. So I've been in the current position for the past 15 years.
So your experience in magazines, which started in New York, what did you learn about the business of magazines?
I learned many things. I learned the importance of the design and of the position of creative director. I learned that when a magazine was successful and sexy, it could seduce advertisers much more than what you could do with a newspaper. And I learned that magazine was a perfect object for long-form journalism.
Yeah, we'll get back to that because I think that's very interesting. And you were there right before or as it started, the whole digital revolution. The titles you're talking about, I remember, and that was the height really of
Yes, I
print.
was just before. I was lucky enough to work in the US, in New York, as a single young man before the internet revolution. So it was amazing years.
Okay, so I think we need to talk about Le Monde a bit for some of our listeners who don't know its history. It's been around for so long. 1944, it's the newspaper of reference, it's called in France. So I just want to talk about the importance of Le Monde in France and the relevance of it, and then perhaps in the wider world as well.
Le Monde was created in 1944, so just before the end of the Second World War, at the time when it was forbidden for all the newspapers that have been publishing news in France while the Germans were in power. So there was a new generation of newspapers in France starting in 1944. And if you look around, many French newspapers were created in either 1944 or 1945. At the beginning was created by a journalist, Hubert Beuve-Méry, and it was a very serious newspaper. One of his motto when he was speaking to his staff was "Faites chiant," meaning make it boring. This newspaper was over serious. There was no picture. It was a black and white paper covering international news, French politics, French economics. It was a magazine run and written by male journalists. It was very serious. He didn't endorse presidents, but he was considered as, I would say, more the left-hand side of the political landscape. So he carried on, and he is today the largest French newspaper.
So who reads it?
I would say the average age is 44 years old, mainly graduated people. And over the past 10 years, thanks to the development of digital subscription and content we were producing for social networks, we have grown our total audience and paid circulation that is now twice what it was 10 years ago. And as you were saying, we like to consider ourselves as the reference newspaper, which means that we do invest to make sure that what we're publishing is independent, is rigorous, is checked. I think one of the reasons why we have been developing this trust relationship with the audience, because we are spending a huge amount of money in journalism to meet this standard being the reference newspaper.
So let's talk about the publishing program at Le Monde beyond the newspaper. You've been doing a magazine for, is it 10, 15 years now?
It will be its 15th anniversary in September 2026.
And it's a weekly.
And it's a weekly. It was created by Marie-Pierre Lannelongue, who is still the editor-in-chief of M Magazine du Monde, who took her inspiration at the New York Times with prototype that was a mix between the T and the New York Times Magazine, meaning long-form journalism, but also fashion pages and style coverage.
It's been going for a long time, so I imagine it's successful from a business point of view as well. And it's another way for Le Monde to get a certain kind of advertiser that maybe the newspaper wouldn't get.
The first goal for us was to reach out to another audience. And it was also a way to convince the editorial staff that this magazine was not only designed to attract advertisers, but also a new form of audience. And the first success of this magazine was to grow the Le Monde readership on the day it was published by 30%. So we saw a younger audience, more women coming to the magazine. And thanks to it, this new audience and its larger audience, we managed to attract advertisers. And right now, Le Monde attract, I think I would say, a fourth of the total advertising revenue for Le Monde, 25%.
Wow.
So it's quite
Wow.
quite
So-
a
So it really is a funnel, not just for the audience, but for ad dollars as well. And it moves 30% of people coming from the magazine to the newspaper. That's a really great number, actually.
Yes, and another challenge was to make the core editorial staff of Le Monde produce for M, Le Magazine Le Monde, not to have two different staff. And Marie-Pierre Lannelongue, during the first 2 years, managed to make on the cover the signature of star journalists from Le Monde to underline the link between the magazine and the editorial staff. And so we managed to have all our staff proud of these new formats and could enjoy having more space and a different angle to write a story.
So then it's also an internal tool in a way, I mean, for morale, for just keeping the talents or all the talents of your staff in tune or interested in the project.
Exactly. And what we even saw is that we have few formats of stories that have been ordered and produced for the magazine and then has been bought as an option for either TV or movies. So the Le Monde journalists discovered that this magazine could be also a way for them to find new markets for their journalism.
New opportunities. So then it's such a brand play. I always tell my clients that 80% of brand is internal. And then that makes M as an object a very important part of the overall brand.
Yes, and when you are responsible for this brand, to be difficult for advertisers, we didn't think the right formats were possible, or that our coverage was only focused on hard news that could be difficult as a context for advertisers. To have this safe space with the magazine was quite new for them. That's why we managed to attract new sector of advertisers. And as luxury goods advertisers are the one who are paying higher tariffs, so the profitability of the magazine was made with those both sources of revenue, higher circulation with an higher cover price, plus a larger advertising market.
So then let's talk about the jump into English. Le Monde mirrors the newspaper. Le Monde did it as a newspaper a while ago. But what is the goal of the English magazine? The press release talked about global ambitions, but also the growth of your English language media overall, which is interesting. And the magazine, I think, is proof of a very healthy media company in many ways. But the magazine is a selection of stories from the weekly French magazine, correct?
Correct. The reason is quite simple. We do believe that the future of journalism rely on the quality of journalism, meaning to do quality journalism. I know it's not fashionable to say it. You need more journalists. If you want to have more time to cover stories, if you are different, you want different angles, if you want to produce on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week, you need more journalists today. To have more journalists, you need to have a larger audience and larger revenues. And the future of revenues are on digital subscription. So with that in mind, 2 years ago at Le Monde, we decided to launch a digital English-speaking edition, Le Monde in English, that is available on your app on desktop. And 2 years later, we thought it was a good time for M to have also an English-speaking version, mainly because we knew that its covers, its photo shoots were well known beyond France, but the magazine was unreadable in French and often not distributed abroad because it was too costly. So we thought that there was a market and we could launch. So we launched the first issue on March 3rd, and we'll do another one in September. And in between, Marie-Pierre Lalonde, head of M, Le Magazine du Monde, is producing bi-weekly newsletter to give 5 stories that are translated as coming from M, Le Magazine du Monde. And we do believe it's important for us to have a much larger audience. We deserve a much larger audience. And as you can imagine, for advertisers, it is very interesting to be able to reach out to this audience that is interested in M but couldn't read M.
And I think it helps that so many of the brands are French, that so many of the world's luxury brands, perfume, fashion is French. And so you don't have to go far to tell them about this. You just have to have a regular meeting with the people who are already advertising in your other stuff and say, oh, by the way, we're doing more.
It does. Because we do the same. I was in Milan 2 months ago to promote this project, and all of the fashion brands, Italian fashion brands, understood the interest for them.
This investment in English, does it mean that you think you have saturated the French market, or this was really, or is there still growth in France and the French market in general as well?
We do believe is still growth possibilities in France, but I think we can do both at the same time. The main reason to launch this Le Monde M International is the development with AI. Without AI, we wouldn't be able to translate all those stories on a daily basis. However, we have decided to recruit an English-speaking staff that after the first layer of AI is amending the translation, editing the papers before publishing it. So AI has given us the possibility to translate much faster and larger volume of stories. So AI is probably the reason that helped us to do this important step forward.
Okay, that's interesting. So without AI, you might not have started the English venture. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. But we wouldn't have done this edition without having the resources internally to check the AI translation and to edit it. It would be too risky for us to ask the people to pay for the content with a bad translation. I feel responsible for the brand safety, and I do believe that at the core of our success, there is this trustworthy relationship between our readers and Le Monde, and I want to be able to be the same quality of relationship with the English-speaking audience. And for that, I need additional staff. So we mixed AI plus staffers.
Was there any hesitation from your editorial staff about using AI in this purpose?
Obviously, there was at the beginning, but for Le Monde in English, at the beginning, there was 3 layers of translation. The first one was AI. Then we asked professional translators to take the stories translated by AI, amended it, then send it back to Paris, where the English-speaking journalist we hired amended it a second time before publishing it. And after a year and a half, all journalists told us the second layer made by professional translators is not useful anymore because AI has made so many progress in a very little amount of time. So now we can have only 2 layers, AI plus journalist. And they are confident we will stick to this commitment to have an internal staff, and they are quite happy with it. And you can imagine for Le Monde journalist to discover that he is read or she is read in the US, in Asia, in Western Europe, in Scandinavia, and to have comments for readers, it's completely different compared to an only French-speaking audience. So it contributes to the adoption of this project by the staff.
We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jeremy Leslie at Mag Culture. We're proud to support The Full Bleed because we love magazines too. Visit magculture.com and see why print is far from over. It's just getting started. Read the journal for interviews and reviews, listen to our podcasts, visit our shop in London and online, and come to our live events in London and New York. We love magazines. Subscribe to our newsletter for weekly updates, all at magculture.com.
Print is Dead is made possible by the support of the Society of Publication Designers. The SPD powers the future of visual storytelling, setting the standard for editorial excellence and shaping the future of visual culture. For more information, visit spd.org.
The other thing I find amazing about the magazine is that it is so French still. It's really a window into France. It's unabashedly French. Those stories that are translated, the references remain very French. And if you don't know it, too bad. You will not understand the reference because it's pure France, this magazine. And so that in itself was a decision that you made. So, no, we're not going to change it for the audience. This is still going to be Le Monde's magazine, the M magazine, but it's going to just be in English.
Yes, we may be wrong, John, so we'll see. But we are very proud of our DNA and thought that the best we could do is promote our DNA. Plus, last year, as there were the Olympic Games in Paris, and at Le Monde and in France, we were quite proud of the images of Paris, of France, of the French attitude that was conveyed by those Olympic Games. And so we thought it was a good time to acknowledge this success and to do a cover on the French touch and saying, yes, we are French media, but we can show you the best of France or the best of our coverage.
Now you're doing it twice a year, right? M International. Is that the plan?
We'll do for the first 2 years, I believe, twice a year plus a bi-weekly newsletter. And then we'll see. I think there is 3 options. We remain with these 2 issues a year, or there is a market for 4 issues a year as a quarterly, or we found international publishers or local publishers that could be interested in doing joint venture to do a local edition of M. I think that's probably it will be a second or third step, but I do think at some point of time we could expand the M International in local edition, but it will be in few years.
So I was going to ask about how you see it operating within the overall Le Monde ecosystem and how you would use it in the future. And you've answered the question, but it does seem to be a very strategic magazine in that sense.
Yes, it is strategic in that sense. It's also very strategic on the advertising market, as many brands are quitting print to invest only on digital. However, they do keep a bucket of investment, advertising investment for few brands, statutory brands with global audience and high quality content. If I want to remain in this bucket and to have access to these budgets, I need to show that I'm a global brand and I can reach out to an audience beyond my natural boundaries. That's why I think it's also strategic on the advertising market.
I find the idea of newspaper magazines and newspapers as media brands fascinating. They exist, obviously, in many parts of the world. Is the advantage the history of the newspaper or the access that an advertiser gets to multiple touch points?
I think what strikes me is that if you come back 20 years ago, the bet was that daily newspaper would die and only would remain magazine because their format and their rhythm was so different from digital. And now, today, it's exactly the contrary. The one who are thriving are newspapers. Look at the figures of the New York Times. Le Monde is quite profitable. And so to do a magazine supplement of a newspaper brand is the best of both worlds. You have the format, you have the quality paper, plus you have the audience driven by daily newspapers. And I think for advertisers, it's quite important to manage two other formats of a magazine, but also to be supported by the audience, the large audience of a newspaper. Plus on digital, I can take each of my stories that I will be publishing at the end of the week and choose when I will be publishing it, at what time during the week. So if it's print, everything will be on the Friday edition. But on digital, you will have few stories on Tuesday, others on Thursday. So I can reach out much larger audience, and it's very interesting for our advertisers too.
So are the advertisers pushing not just you, but large legacy media brands to do more? And is it a way to find new advertisers, or are you just consolidating the advertisers you have?
I would say that the only way to both consolidate the major advertisers and reach out to new ones. I don't think that you could expect a rise of your advertising revenue without this kind of support. Because also, and as the news and the environment have been quite difficult over the past, say, 2 years. Wars in different points of the world, elections, turmoils. In a magazine, I can expect to regularly have a safe space for advertisers. In a daily, it's very difficult to do the good news when your environment is made only of bad news or violent news. So an advertiser have difficulties understanding that there may be between two very difficult stories or war coverage. I can build a safe space with a magazine, a weekly magazine.
Newspapers are always difficult for that very reason. What is the media landscape right now in France? Is it closer to England than it is to the United States? What's going on there?
In France, the media market used to be magazine market with few newspapers. Now, this market has consolidated around few shareholders that have aggregated magazines or magazine and dailies. And Le Monde in this market is an exception since it is owned by a foundation and by its employees. So in this world, when French media are mainly owned by either oligarch or people who are trying to push their personal or political interest, we remain an exception. I do believe that it's because we are this exception that we have been that successful over the past 10 years. And it's like in the US, there is this say in economics saying the leader takes all. Out of 100 new digital subscribers in France, Le Monde takes 70% of them, 70. The rest of the market will share the leftover. So it's a market that is starting to be very consolidated, which at the same time is good for the Le Monde business model, but not good for the debate. I would love to have 2 or 3 strong newspapers. In France, the Le Figaro, which is reaching a paid circulation of 300,000 a day. Le Monde is now 550,000 a day. So it's different. But it's a conservative newspaper, but it's a newspaper. The rest is very small.
So you're in an interesting position to comment on the future of magazines and media in general. The backlash to the internet is here. People are realizing that what they were promised isn't happening. At least the mass market part of it. The ads often are irrelevant and I think hurt the brand in many ways. The way the internet treats people, we're using the word slop a lot now in English. And the great word that has entered the language, enshittification, which is about the general entropy that happens around the internet. I don't think the ad industry sees it that way, though. They see convenience and economics and simplicity in many ways. We know print offers the most engagement. It's the deepest reading. And so for advertisers that understand it, they support print. And you're lucky enough that a lot of them are luxury brands and that they happen to be where you are. What do you think about the media overall and the state we're in right now?
I remain quite optimistic, and with the degradation of the environment on digital, I think at some point of time, advertisers will understand that they need to focus more on brand safety. And if they want their ad to be efficient, they need to make sure that the environment is safe. It's not safe on social networks. It's not safe on digital. It's often not safe on all those websites that are available for free. When you have a media that is investing in staff and journalism, plus is developing digital subscription, I can guarantee you who is going to watch your ad and what would be around. And then at some point of time, I'm pretty sure there will be a
A
balance.
cleansing?
Yes.
Yeah, I always say that an ad is leverage. You're leveraging the brand, and the brand is leveraging the advertiser. It's a partnership.
Mhm.
And that has completely gone in many places out of whack. It doesn't
Mhm.
exist. That's the big problem that people have, I think.
There is one issue that remains. We managed to reach a younger audience. And all those brands are fond of reaching out to the teens or the late teens, and they think that only TikTok or Instagram will be able to reach to this new audience, which is our future. So our responsibility also is to address this issue and say, no, you can come to Le Monde because I can be legitimate for this audience. So come with me and you will be able to reach out to this audience. But that's something that was difficult to convince the advertisers that were in this fashion trend thing. Those legacy media are dead or dying. We should move forward and go to Instagram and TikTok. It's not good for the brands.
Yeah, I keep thinking of the marketing funnel and the readership funnel that you've created. In a way, these magazines are labs for the larger media in terms of dealing with the public, in terms of social, all of that stuff. They're like laboratories.
Yeah. And plus, for us, it's forced us to invest, to expect this younger audience to come in newsstand or to pay for subscription would be very naive. This audience, it is my job to manage to initiate a relationship with them on those networks and then step by step to make them come to me on the app, on the international edition of M, on Le Monde in English, or in the app of Le Monde, and then to manage to find a place for advertisers. So I think we have a role in securing safer environment for those brands.
I can picture the journey mapping that's going on for the reader from the magazine up to the Monde,
We have seen it.
for the advertiser as well.
Yeah, we have seen it with Snapchat. I was the first to sign with Snapchat, I would say 10 years ago in France. Right now, we have 1.5 million French teenagers reading our content on Discovery on Snapchat on a daily basis. And after 2 or 3 years, I saw a part of this audience moving to the app or moving to digital subscription when they were getting a little older. So there is a journey, but to expect the journey to go over there and to respect that those networks are their playing field. So we have to be there.
One of the things we've learned on this podcast is that young people are discovering print, and they didn't really grow up with magazines, and they're discovering them and realizing that they're actually good places to be because they're quiet and the reading experience is deeper than it is on the internet, and it's not distracting. So many of the magazines we've been talking to, the readership is incredibly young, and some of the places we've been talking to who have magazine stores or something are just amazed at how young their clientele are. So maybe there is hope.
Yes, we have many reasons to be much more optimistic than 15 years ago. 15 years ago, Le Monde was losing 10 million euros a year. This year, we'll be making an EBITDA of 26 million euros. We were selling 240,000 copies a day. We are selling 550,000 copies a day now. And even more interesting, digital subscription will next year pay for the total cost of my editorial staff, either digital or print. It's a huge transformation. And when this momentum, it's a win-win situation. This momentum attracts younger journalists who attract a younger audience. And this younger audience plus the momentum attract advertisers. Then I get profit. Then I can reinvest and be optimistic.
It's a
Yes, it's a positive circle. Yeah.
So to end the show, we ask for 3 magazines or media that are exciting you right now. So what are they?
Magazine or media? I would say New York Magazine. It was a magazine I was reading 30 years ago when I was in New York, and I'm still reading it. They have made a huge transformation of the format. They are very good on digital. So I'm reading it. It's very interesting. I think what the New York Times is doing remain a reference in terms of coverage, in terms of diversity of formats, in terms of UX design. That's another reference for me. And the third, not in France, would be The Guardian. They have been developing their international audience with the European edition. They are very good on digital, in print also.
This has been The Full Bleed, a podcast about the future of magazines and the magazines of the future. The Full Bleed is a production of Magazium LLC. This episode was produced by Patrick Mitchell. If you'd like to comment on the show or just, start a conversation, send me an email at hello@magazium.co or visit our website at magazium.co, where you can read transcripts of all of our interviews along with portfolios, archival photos, links, and more. We've got a swag shop too. My name is Arjun Basu. Thanks very much for listening. Welcome to the future.